Welcome to Footnotes, a behind-the-scenes look at what we value and why it matters here at Foothill Church in Glendora, California.
All right, well, welcome back to our podcast Footnotes, another episode this morning, and so good to have you listening along with us. Today we actually have, I should introduce myself too. My name is Stephen Coppenrath. I'm one of the pastors around here. Thanks, Ethan, for that reminder too. And today we have Daniel Kaylor, who, now I'm confused because I just said Ethan, and we used to call you Ethan and Ethan Daniel. So did that actually start right away from day one, pretty much?
I think that's because of Chris Lewis. For some reason, every single time, Chris will call me Ethan. I'm not sure if it's a compliment or not.
No, it's definitely not a compliment. I mean, not because Ethan's a bad guy, but because he can't remember your name. So that's not a good thing. Just to be clear, this was a long time ago and probably early on in the hiring process.
Yeah, I think Chris resorted to calling me buddy now, just in case. I don't know if he
still calls me buddy too. I don't know what that means though.
Well, I'm sorry.
So today we have Daniel Kaylor from Chino fame, from many years of serving and working in churches and schools. And so, Daniel, good to have you here. We're going to be talking about serving. We're going to be talking about kind of the group of volunteers that you oversee here. But honestly, man, I'm just looking forward to having you on our podcast, having people the opportunity to hear from you. And you're one of our few folks on staff who hasn't been on yet. So glad to have you here, man.
It's great to be here.
Yeah. Tell us about your family a little bit. Love to hear more about your wife and your kids, and give us some of those stats.
Yeah. So I'm married to my beautiful wife, Emily. We're probably coming into 10 years of marriage next year.
Sweet.
And we have 3 lovely kids. Ezra is turning 5 soon. Adeline just turned 3. And our little tiny baby Rai is turning 2 in a couple months. So we're pretty busy in our household.
Is her name actually Rai?
No, it's Riley.
Okay.
But we call her baby Rai around the house.
That's good. I don't call her that. I call her Riley, but that's okay.
Shout out to baby Rai.
There it is. At least you're getting me.
I hope you're listening.
One day, baby Rai will listen and be really impacted by this part of the conversation. Well, tell us a little bit about just kind of your job, kind of what you do around here, what keeps you busy these days.
Yeah, well, I have the blessing to actually be the connections minister here at Foothill, and I think I've jumped into this role maybe a few years ago. But basically,
you didn't start there.
No,
I'm gonna interrupt you. Where did you start at Foothill?
Actually, I was the facilities guy.
Yeah, you were. Yeah.
Basically fixing anything that people break.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
And just to chime in, so Daniel he started facilities, and I knew from day one that he wasn't going to be facilities long because Daniel definitely has a pastor's heart. There's this sense of caring for people, loving ministry, always taking that extra step. And so, but you're also still handy, which is helpful in your current role too.
Yeah, and I've been loving it, and I think it gets me in trouble sometimes because I feel like I can build everything, but usually I think people point me. There's an IKEA for that. But
I don't think that's a saying, but that's okay.
But I just love building, and but it takes a little time. But and I think in guest services, I've been actually really loving it, and the fact that I get the opportunity in guest services. Some people actually think that their guest services gets closely related to, the hotel management kind of thing.
Yeah.
But for me, guest services, I basically oversee anything that's not happening on the stage or an age kind of graded ministry. So these are things from like the street to the seat. So parking, seating, setting up and tearing down, the first time guest process, and basically, the little logistics behind the weekend services. And it's been quite amazing actually to serve with the volunteers in the ministry. It's been a huge blessing.
For sure. Just to kind of even jump into kind of current times, like how is that leadership? How is that impacted by COVID the last year? I mean, you're usually interacting with folks on the weekends, and for the most part, we've been online, and just recently, the last few months, been in person. But has that been just a challenging time the last year?
You know what? It has been, but praise God that He has allowed me to see just the good things that came out of it. The fact that when COVID hit, we went all online. We didn't need volunteers, but I still wanted to have these guys have a volunteer spirit. So we just switched to praying.
Yeah.
I kept them continuing to be scheduled for their weekends, being online, but they chose to serve as prayer warriors during those services.
Yeah.
So they were, praying for the services, praying for the guests that are, tuning in online. And it's been actually a huge blessing, just the fact that ever since we came out and we're now outside and basically having a flood of people wanting to get back into serving, that they missed it. And honestly, it's been a huge blessing just to see the amazing servant hearts that have come out of that. Basically, they were bursting at the seams of wanting to get back to doing what they feel like they were called to do, and that's to serve the church.
Yeah, it's such a weird time because during non-COVID kind of regular rhythm of church, so much of, I think maybe people don't maybe even realize this, but the pastoral staff, our heart for kind of Ephesians 4 type ministry, like to equip the saints for the work of ministry. But there's this sense that like we want to help people understand the why they serve, and and really finding a good place for them to do that. And then you stop, and there's all this pent up demand about like our kind of spiritual muscles are atrophying a little bit for serving. So, I alluded to it before, Daniel, but you've actually had a little bit of a history, just even serving in the church, serving at even Christian schools and stuff. So tell us about, I think maybe the short version, because I know this kind of goes back a ways, but I think you were even a part of a church plant in the past. What's been your serving history like in the church, and kind of how did you first get started?
Yeah, well, before I directly answer that question, I just want to mention that the Lord saved me at the age of 19, which shout out to Emily for inviting me to church so many years ago. But yeah, we attended this church in Claremont. It was a church plant, so it was really easy to kind of jump in and to start serving.
Lots of needs right off the bat.
Lots of needs. And because of my availability and maybe, somewhat of gifts and talents that I had, I just quickly got connected. And something that really stood out to me is basically the younger aged children, because I feel like that was the gap in which, I really wanted to kind of have this relationship with Christ. And I didn't have it when I was a child. So I wanted to give that to the children. So because of that passion, the leaders in that church gave me the role of children's director. But I also really loved youth and college. So I was the leaders within those areas as well. So great time there. Actually, I think my time serving there, we have created a lot of relationships. I actually fell in love with my wife there. We got married. And currently, another couple that we served in ministry there in youth are actually now our growth group leaders here that we serve with.
Oh, cool.
So shout out to the Olsons.
Yeah, so you were at the church plant in Claremont for a few years. At what point did kind of serving in the church kind of overlap with even just career and job stuff?
Yeah. So basically what ended up happening is that I was just trying to, pay the bills and just working one job to the next. And then with my handyman skills, ended up seeing a posting at Western Christian at their Upland campus for a facilities guy. Ended up applying, and luckily Greg ended up hiring me, and I worked there for a few years, and loved working in that environment. But what ended up happening is that I started to attend Foothill, kind of a couple years after, and literally, I was just trying to get a part-time job here when I saw that there was a setup and teardown position. So basically, I got through an interview with John thinking that it was for a part-time, but he was like, actually, we are trying to hire someone for a facilities director role here. Right. That's full-time. Here's the paperwork. If you want to take a look at it, be my guest. You kind of fit the bill, what we're looking for. So as we prayed about it, me and my wife agreed that this is probably the best fit for us. And that's kind of how I started to come here at Foothill Church. And that was a crazy transition for us because I started working here. We just had Ezra. Right. And also, we kind of switched churches. So those three big things, work, family, and a new church, everything happened in the span of 2 months. So, but that's how I started to work here at Foothill Church. And, a couple years later now I'm the connections minister. So
now you're in charge of the whole place.
Oh my gosh. I wouldn't say that.
Kind of. No, that was a funny time because I think I was actually on my sabbatical when you first started.
Yeah.
And I remember we hired you, and then one of the first times I met Emily actually was in your hospital room, and like I remember you just handing me Ezra. You're like, "Hey, here's my kid."
Here you go.
Yeah, it was awesome just to kind of like jump in right away, relationship, community that way. So yeah, I mean, what I love, Daniel, about your story is that there's this sense of kind of story arc behind the scenes. It's just like you've come in at the ground level at a church plant, like you said, just getting coffee, donuts, and you kind of remember those days of being a volunteer and kind of being motivated in that way. Being paid at the school level, being now on staff at church. So what have you kind of learned about even what motivates volunteers over the years? Like what is it like? How far does breakfast burritos get us really? Yeah. Or at some point does there need to kind of be more of a spelled out why behind why we serve?
Yeah, that's good. Well, some of the questions that I get asked by volunteers, why do we serve? Why do we wake up early and stay late on the weekends? Or why do we go through so much trouble crafting an experience for people we're not even sure that will show up? And I just remind them of this simple truth, because Jesus first served us. Yeah. And we want to be generous in our service, and we want it to point to him. So as we welcome guests, turning onto our campus and helping them to their seat, we're doing all of this because that is what Jesus has called us to do. And I think that is the main thing that I try to motivate our volunteers for, is basically not to be focused on the what that they're doing, because the what is important, but it's basically the why that they're doing it. Yeah. And that's the biggest part. One of the example of this is that this past Thursday, so Good Friday is happening. We needed to set up before Good Friday. It was 5:30 p.m. Told all the volunteers to come, to set up some tents, put out some chairs, make the place look presentable for Good Friday. But before that, I ended up doing the free coffee for them, got them in a huddle, told them basically the what, but the main focus of that little huddle was basically the why. And it's the fact that the chairs that you're going to be putting out, you might be, putting out 100 to 300 chairs individually, but there might be a chair that you're going to be setting out that someone's going to experience Christ for the very first time. Walls might be broken, marriages might be rebuilt, with putting out that chair. So I think that gives them this urgency of the job that they have. They're not just putting out chairs so people have somewhere to sit, but they're putting out a chair so someone could actually hear the gospel, that the gospel can penetrate their hearts and have their lives changed forever.
Yeah, man, that's super profound. And I love just to kind of recap it again. Daniel's talking about this kind of like the what and the why, right? Like there's kind of any job, any volunteer position, any I think even any role that we have, like as a parent even or as a friend, there's kind of the what of like, what are we up to today? What has to be done? What are the tasks that have to be accomplished? Is that right? Yeah. And then there's kind of like the why behind it. Like what is the deeper meaning behind why we do what we do? And that's summed up really well, man, because I think for some people, serving with guest services, putting out chairs, making coffee, you can get very caught up in the what. And hey, what has to be done this morning in order for us to be ready for 9 a.m. service, 11 a.m. service. But yeah, so much of what we are trying to do collectively and what I love just hearing your heart about is that why. So tell me more about that why. What are some of the kind of like those guiding principles? What are some of those things that are maybe even coming to the surface in this season specifically that you're focusing on? Yeah.
So the why is more important to the what. That's actually a part of one of these little sticky phrases that we have called plumb lines. Yeah. And basically they capture the essence of who we are and what we're headed as a ministry.
So a plumb line. Yeah. You're a handy guy. What is a plumb line? Exactly. Yeah. Like literally, what is a plumb line?
Yeah. So basically a plumb line is used to kind of for your kind of cornerstone to make sure that a building's going to be lined up straight.
Okay. Yeah.
And basically, these for us, plumb lines are going to be what we kind of stand by to kind of point us in the right direction. Making sure that everything is going to be running smoothly. And this is what kind of heads our ministry. Cool. And these weren't adopted by us, or these were adopted by us, but weren't created by us. Okay. It was definitely created by Danny Franks, a friend of mine, serving in guest services at the Summit Church.
You guys are friends, huh?
Yeah. We emailed like at least 6 times. So
that's the line.
That qualifies friends.
That's awesome.
Maybe buddy if it's up to 10 emails. But yeah, so he created this plumb lines for his church, and a couple of them that we use regularly in our volunteer huddles is the gospel is offensive, nothing else should be. Like I said, the why is more important than the what, and also that everything speaks. So we might not be like a very flashy church or a kind of program-driven kind of church, but what Mark Dever has said is what you win them with is what you would win them to. So I've been focusing on just that, especially in this season, to get them from the streets to the seats without offending them. We're going to do our best to help you park your car in a convenient parking spot, or try to provide you a great cup of coffee, or even provide a very comfortable place to sit and to hear the gospel being preached. But basically, we're trying to strive to serve well because we've been served well. And we strive to love well because we were loved well. And man, oh man, this is would be so hard if I didn't have the service coordinators of Sheila and Annie in this season, because they've been rock stars awesome. For me in guest services. And with both of these, we're strive to do both of these things as in order to move people towards a relationship with Christ. And that's basically our main focus right now, is to create a place where people can hear the gospel and to grow in their relationship with Christ.
That's good. That's our mission statement.
Yeah.
So that's you're on brand, man. That's awesome. Everything speaks. Talk about that just a little bit more. What does that mean? Like everything speaks. Are we talking about literally people talking? Or are we talking about just how things look? Or
exactly.
Yeah.
So just think about, you're coming onto our Baseline campus. Imagine if you don't see Jose at that corner giving you the awesome 2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
Hey,
I would be totally disoriented. I'd be like, where am I right now?
Exactly.
Yeah,
or you didn't have any parking volunteers, or maybe we didn't even put our flags up. And what happens if there's no direction signs, there's no greeters, there's no ushers, there's maybe our signs are backwards, or maybe
Ethan's fault.
Ugly things.
Yep. Ethan's fault too.
Yeah, I doubt it. He's actually really good at his job.
He's okay.
But when it comes down to, like, everything speaks on our campus.
Yeah.
So our volunteer teams, the banners that are on our walls, the way that we present ourselves. So we want to make sure that we are putting ourselves up to not offend anyone. So all these plumb lines are actually working with each other. And that's the best part, is that once you're doing one, you're probably going to be doing the other. Because it always wraps around to that first plumb line, which the gospel should be offensive and nothing else should be. So it basically, what the hard thing is, that, and this has been a hurdle for our volunteers, is the fact that there's so many things that are going on in our lives personally. So we kind of have to leave them at the door when we're starting to serve. Yeah. And that's why we have a volunteer huddle. And Sheila and Annie, our service coordinators right now, have been really good to help them point them into the right direction, to kind of leave that at the door and allow them to understand the importance of their role. Okay. So as they're, imagine a greeter is, handing out communion to you, but they're on their cell phone. Yeah. Or what happens if during this, COVID time, where we're having to comply with a lot of these, LA County CDC rules, what happens if we're not handing out your communion with gloves on? Right. But we are handing out our communion with gloves on, because we want to make sure that you're being handed something that's safe and clean, right, so you're able to partake of the Lord's communion. So
cool.
Yeah. So when it comes down to, you've probably seen a lot of branding, and this is probably to, our youth and our kids. They got new tents. Mm-hmm. So imagine, having broken down tents as you're entering our campus. You kind of get this idea of, like, is this the church for me? They're not even taking care of their own kind of the way that they're presenting themselves as we enter.
Right.
So
Yeah, I think that there's a stat maybe out there, something about how like most people will decide that they're enjoying their church experience or will come back in like the first like 7 seconds or something like that.
yeah, the first 7 seconds coming onto the parking lot.
Just coming on the parking lot, seeing how everything speaks to is this a church for me? How does the kids ministry look from afar? Are things well labeled and signage good? So yeah, man, I can definitely see, and maybe this is even kind of like a peek behind the scenes where some people probably have not even thought about what it looks like to equip church in this way. But these are obviously very important conversations to have and things that you're involved in. So, Daniel, you have the mic in front of you. You have at least, I don't know, your parents are listening probably at least. We have 2 listeners at least, maybe Emily too. What are some of your greatest needs right now? Just like really practically in your ministry area, who could you use in the next few months or the next serving session as far as volunteer positions?
I would say our biggest need right now is our 11 a.m. service because everyone's volunteering for the 9, so praise God for that. But we have a few spots in our 11 a.m. service, and specifically for on our security team and our parking team. So if you have a desire to serve in one of those ministries, you don't really have to have experience at all. We'll train you up. But if you definitely want to join into one of those ministries, please let me know.
So 11 a.m. service, parking, and security are really kind of your top things that you want to fill right now.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure there are people who are listening who just hearing Daniel talk, hearing Daniel, just even his story, and can maybe even fulfill some of those needs. So hopefully you guys would be able to step up and help us out during 11 a.m. at that time. If they wanted to serve, what's the process for that? What's the first step? Is it going to a website? What's the...
Yeah, it's so easy. Foothill.church/serve. There's many opportunities on there, so I don't want to just take you for myself, but go to guest services and you'll see a couple options on there. And if you want to do security or parking, click that and we can get you kind of rolling from there.
Yeah, we're giving fellow kids their opportunity next week to plug, so no worries there. All right, so just as we wrap this up, Daniel, I appreciate your time and just hey man, love your family. Just want to what's kind of been the normal cadence for your family? What do you guys enjoy doing nowadays together?
Oh man, because of the ages of our kids, we love to do everything outdoors right now.
Yeah.
So anything from just going on our family walks. All 3 of our kids walk. They're having a great time with it. So they're loving just to walk, kind of not even holding our hands and just looking at every single bug or climbing every single rock or trying to jump over, run off sprinkler puddles.
Is this your kids or you or?
This is only me at this point.
It's okay. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
so what do your kids like to do now?
That's good, Steven. Way to picture me right now.
I can totally
as a
picture
little
you
child.
like walking around, pointing out bugs, jumping into puddles.
That is funny. Yeah, so we love to go on our family walks and actually hikes and whatever we can. All of our kids actually really love to ride bikes besides baby Rai. But we love to ride bikes. So we actually just moved from Chino to Glendora. Yeah. So if you have any recommendations of maybe good places to walk or maybe in playgrounds, we love finding great playgrounds.
Cool.
Because that helps us parents just to let them roam free and we can just chill and hang out. But
that's great.
So anything
whatever's good for you.
Anything anything outdoors. Yeah, I love playgrounds. So I love playgrounds.
I feel like it's kind of weird,
but seriously though, we went to Bonelli. So Pudding Stone, they have like all these playgrounds. Yeah. We did a nice little ride there, and they have this, I don't know what it's called, but I don't know. We got there and we played a game called Floor's Lava.
You're talking about, I know, it's that playground
Headstone,
area.
Or I don't know what it's called.
It's like Stonehenge, kind
there,
of like.
Yeah, there it is.
Playground.
Basically, all these rocks are like a couple feet apart.
Right.
I had a lot of fun there. Yeah. Like personally. Well,
this is the first. This is the first. Okay. Oh, okay. You gonna help me out here, Daniel?
Yeah. So
keep talking.
Yeah. I don't know if I can help you. I don't know. I don't think I can help you. I had a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay. All right, last question. So we've talked about a lot of things, and one of the things that we were kind of jumping into was the mechanics of just like motivating volunteers. Obviously, I think in the secular area of the world, what you kind of do a little bit actually even speaks to like customer service kind of things. And so just as you share, just a book or a resource, I'd love to just even hear, are there other books in regards to what you've been reading the last few years just around, guest services even too, but also just another resource or book that you would share?
Yeah, I already mentioned his name, my good friend Danny Franks. Jeez Louise. That's funny.
Okay.
So yeah, I already mentioned Danny Franks, but he came out with a book called People Are the Mission. And it's a great resource for anyone that is basically a leader in church or specifically that are in connections ministry or guest services ministry. And another one that's not kind of guest services related, but was a really impactful book. And we actually read it as a staff, and it was called Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
That was just a great book for me. It was a game changer, really, because it helped me create better habits. And this could be easily kind of turned into kind of as you serve, you can create better habits, like being there on time.
Yeah, it's important.
Because it's important to be there on time, because then you can be a part of your huddle and then listen to basically the why and the what's to serving. But another resource that has been actually really helpful, it's actually an app. I'm not sure. Do you have Hoopla?
Is it the book app?
Yeah. So
say more about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the library, the Glendora library, they ended up having this free resource for everybody to you can borrow, rent ebooks, audiobooks, whatever you want. But a book that I started to read right now, actually listen to, is a book by C.J. Mahaney called Worldliness. And I kind of can't wait to dive more into it, but it's a great book that just helps believers learn to relate to the world while resisting its influence. But there's so many great books, especially in gift services. There was a book called The Comeback Effect on there, and actually a recent book that we read as a staff that's on there about just the culture in which that we're living in right now. But one book that I'm kind of listening to right now is by C.J. Mahaney called Worldliness.
Cool.
But it's a great resource.
We'll link that in the show notes.
Yeah.
And Hoopla as well. That's great, man. Cool. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate what you're doing with our volunteers. It's been awesome to see you in your sweet spot when it comes to just motivating and building out systems.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, man. I had some good laughs.
All right, well, we're out of time, but thanks for joining us for our podcast, Footnotes. Be sure to subscribe, and we'd also appreciate you sharing this resource with others, and even leaving us a favorable review if you feel so inclined. So until next time, Foothill, peace be with you.
I had a lot of fun there.
Yeah.
Like personally.